I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it over to Carmella and Sarah. My name is Junior Lopez and I'm the founder and music director of the Young Artist Orchestra. And throughout the month of May, we're going to be doing several masterclasses, seminars, workshops, and even educational videos for students in our programs. We normally run about 15 to 20 events every year. We're a pretty busy youth music program, and unfortunately, because of the outbreak, a lot of our events were canceled. So these are little measures that we took to sort of supplement the remainder of the season. And this is actually the very first class we're doing. And we thought it would be great to do an audition prep class to talk about how to best prepare, what to expect, and little things that maybe could make an audition better, specifically because this is audition season for us, and we're expecting a lot of students to be doing their video auditions within the next month. So I'm going to pass it over. I'd like to introduce Dr. Carmella Cao and Sarah Phillips, who is actually our concerto competition winner. She won first prize back in January. We'll be playing something with the orchestra. We have to talk about that later, Sarah. She's going to be she'll be a soloist with the orchestra later on in the season. Anyway, I'm going to pass it over, and we'll start the class.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm Carmella Cao, and it's great to see all of you tuned in for this. I'm really excited to hear Sarah play as she's prepared some of these excerpts. As you just mentioned, there were some questions posed in the original posting, so I prepared a couple of things to point out for auditions, again, because auditions are so important for us in any aspect of performance, right? It's one way in which we're evaluated frequently. So as we hear Sarah play, I'll kind of interject with some of these things, and we'll talk about, in general, auditions and how to prepare, as I'm sure Sarah has a lot of insight into this, as we will see very soon. So Sarah, if you'd like to talk about yourself.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I am going to be a senior in high school. I'm 17 years old. I obviously play the flutes. I'm excited to do this. This is the only thing I have right now. So let's do it. Shall we just start right into it?
Yeah, so Sarah's going to be starting with Beethoven's Leonore Overture, the Allegro excerpt. Very nice. Great to hear. So I don't know if everybody just had that reaction with what they were hearing. Obviously, with technology, we have some other, kind of challenges that we have to deal with. For instance, when I was listening in my headphones just now, it was cutting in and out because of the distortion, right? For flute, it doesn't like our computers and phones don't really like some of the very high pitches that we have with the instruments. So as you're like recording and things for online auditions, you want to be careful with the kind of audio that you're using, like different microphones, etc. For now, a lot of iPhones, a lot of Android phones, they have really good cameras. For audio, it's a little different story. So there's some kinds of microphones that you can buy to help you with recording auditions and things like that. So minus that, what I was able to hear, obviously, was extremely good preparation on this excerpt. So before we get into a couple of the details with that, Sarah, can you tell us a few things that you use to help you prepare this excerpt?
The first thing I did was listen to different recordings of it, just so I can understand what was happening before I entered, and so you know what's going on around you. And I was looking mainly for vibrato speed because it differed for each recording. Some people liked wider ones, and some people liked kind of smaller ones. So I kind of found a midway where I liked it, and that's what I basically did. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So that's some of the things that I think are really important when preparing an audition. I call them the 3 C's that I use. So first one is composer. So Sarah looked up Beethoven, okay?
Yeah.
And you have to understand about the time period, right? So like she just said, some of the recordings she heard, the vibrato varied a little bit more, okay? So that's a stylistic trait that, you know, some players are maybe making it more of a 20th century vibrato versus less vibrato, etc. So it's important to understand what time period the composer was coming from, what stylistic traits are associated with that composer. And each composer, of course, is very different. She's, in addition to playing Beethoven, she's going to be playing Debussy and Mendelssohn for us. Each of them sound very different, right? Another thing is which country are they from? That will also affect changes in style, articulations, dynamics, accents, things like that. The second C, which Sarah described very well, is context. So she took a listen so she could understand where in the piece this little tiny excerpt is from. What comes before, what comes after. Who's playing with you? Is it a thick texture, thin texture, right? Because that can affect some of our dynamic choices. So for instance, this excerpt, Sarah did a really good job of bringing the dynamic way down for that last sustained note, right? Because she understands that when she listened to it and studied it, that note is still kind of the ending of the solo, but it is now part of the context with the orchestra. It's no longer a focal point. Right? So it's important to understand again where the solo falls. Is it a transitionary solo or is it a main point that's happening? Okay, so Sarah did a really good job with describing and understanding the context. The next one, the third C, is consistency. Establishing your own individual sound. Staying consistent to the writing of the composer, but to yourself. When Sarah just played this, it was very energetic. I could see her spirit right away. And that's something that we want to hear as judges or people who are listening to any kind of musical performance. We want to hear you. It's your individual take on, obviously, just something that's on a piece of paper. Okay, so that's really great to hear. Also, staying consistent with your clarity of articulation, dynamic choosing, technique, ideas, character. Like I said, Sarah did a really great job of showing us immediately the character and style that she wanted with this excerpt. Okay, so let's go back and now let's start with, I know you've been standing there for a while now. I just played all this, but that's always the hard part. Yeah, so you did a really good job on the pickup note, right? That's one thing that's very difficult in this excerpt is starting right off with a pickup note. So I noticed you took a really good breath and then came in. So that shows me that you were doing a really good job subdividing right before you needed to come in. Can you play the opening few measures for us again? Okay. So hang on, sorry. I know there's always a little bit of a delay. Yeah, so make sure you're really subdividing those rests as well. Dee-da-ba-ba-bum, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. So that it's just really fitting in again with, you know, the instruments that you're hearing in your head. I think also you can maybe think of launching off of that G a little bit more, so that you can have a little bit more of an even more singing quality. Can you try it again? Yes, that's it, exactly. Now be careful of that first D. we can't make it a little too long.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really difficult on flute, like I said, to get the low note to speak right away. Sometimes one technique that some players use is what they call kind of a slap key technique, where they choose a finger and literally slap it right before they play to kind of get the flute, I guess, moving, vibrating. There's some dangers in that, right? It could be very noisy, maybe it's delayed, things like that. But that is one technique that I've seen with this excerpt in particular, with trying to get that D speaking exactly right. But you were doing it pretty well those other 2 times. So just try it again and really subdivide. Yes. Yeah. Oh, wait, sorry. Yeah. Can you emphasize it more as a pickup? So a little bit more so that we know that the F sharp is the beginning of the measure. Yes, good. So some people talk about varying the dynamics in, you notice that Beethoven repeats the figure in a 330 or a 343, 345, right? You see the G comes back again, okay? Some people have talked about varying the dynamics. So maybe the first time is a little louder, second time a little quieter, so you have room to grow throughout that phrase. So maybe experiment with how you want to phrase that, if you're aiming for those low G's to kind of lift off of as well. In the triplet section, okay, this part is obviously one of the harder parts to make sure that you're getting the duple versus triple feel. And it's a little easy to kind of keep it a little too duple, I guess, versus the lighter triplet. Can you also phrase it toward the middle of the triplet? So a little 2 measures up, a little bit down afterward, so that you have some room to grow with those 16th notes and then the subito pianissimo, right? Which is really difficult. Can you just start, I won't make you play the A to F sharp thing again. Can you do the G? And the pickup to, yes, 343.
343, yeah.
Yeah. I think you can still make it even lighter on the triplets. A little more dancey, uplifting, kind of ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Can you try just the triplets? Yeah, because then it sounds a little bit more like, you know, we're skipping through a field. Yeah. We're a little happy, right? Yes, yeah. Good. And then, yeah, like I said, for some reason in my sound, it's cutting out with the D. But yeah, I think that's nice with the 2 bars up, kind of middle of the triplets, and then a little back down. All right, so you have any questions about this piece?
Have you ever played it with the orchestra before?
This is one that I have not played with the orchestra. I've heard it a couple of times. The last one being with the Las Vegas Philharmonic. But no, I actually have not. Just like you, recordings and stuff, yeah. You know, score study and imagining that I'm playing with orchestra, yeah. You know. But yeah, this solo is very tricky because it does kind of come out of nowhere, you know, but it's a little different from some of the other parts because it is so kind of light. It's a different character, energetic than what we hear from other parts of it.
Especially from the beginning.
Yes.
Very different.
Yes. Okay.
Let's move on to prelude.
Sure.
Oh, I have a question. For 3 measures before number 1, when we have the 3 rests, do you want me to count through that or just move on to 1?
Good question, right? That's always a tricky one when it comes to, do we count the rests or do we not count the rests, right? If the rests are too long, then yes, cut it out. But I would say try to keep the same meter so that wherever beat 1 was, you still stay with beat 1 so it doesn't surprise the judges like, oh, now she's on beat 4 or something. So still subdividing and knowing exactly where you are. I think that helps. But yeah, very good question. So in this case, no, you don't have to.
Awesome.
Okay. Good. So let's just talk about this opening. Who is playing with you?
Oh, sorry?
Who is playing with you at this part, at the very beginning?
The harp, and then at the end of it, the clarinet and oboe and violin join in to take to pick up from where I left off.
So at the very, very, very beginning?
Oh, sorry. At the very beginning, I'm alone. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. So to me, again, I don't know if it's what's coming through the computer on my end, but it sounds maybe a little too loud to me.
Okay.
I think you can sneak in a little bit more. It's just like a very ethereal kind of solo, right? Like it says, it's prelude to the afternoon of a fawn. Do you know what a fawn is?
Yes, it's basically a baby deer, right?
Wrong fawn.
Oh, you're talking about mythology. Yeah, it's basically a Greek mythology. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. What does he look like?
It looks like the bottom half is horse and the front half is human, right?
Yeah, so it's half man, half goat. Yeah.
Oh,
So we mainly talk about the god Pan in relation to pieces like this. So Afternoon of the Fawn, this is, do you know what the original piece was for? Like what's the background of it?
I know that he took inspiration from a poem by it, and it was about like the nymphs and the god Pan, and it became a ballet later on.
Yes, exactly. So if you can imagine like the dancers and how, you know, Pan is this kind of, oftentimes if you see the original choreography, Pan is just literally lying on a rock. So he's kind of just waking up. So if you think of that kind of idea for the beginning of the solo, like I said, I think you can play a little quieter because it does get more intense as we go. Okay, so maybe try a little softer, more transparent kind of tone at the beginning, and that'll help with the breath control.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even more. For me, on my end, it's still coming through very, very strong. Again, I don't know if that's because of the microphone, but like I said, just very like a transparent kind of sound. And take your time. So we still have to have this very important eighth note pulse, and you have to play with it, and it has to be steady, but you're kind of playing around it. Okay, so you're doing a good job of the duple versus triple. I think just even more relaxed if you can. For just the beginning, you can reserve that the way you just played for the later solos that come back. Okay, just try it again. Yeah, I liked that. Like that very, like I said, light kind of sound, because then it makes us really, you know, as an audience go, oh, something's happening, right? Make them lean in, because how often do we get to play literally by ourselves surrounded by an orchestra?
Yeah, no.
Exactly. So, right. So it's a very special opening, you know, and they talk about different tone colors that you can use, right? So experiment as you're playing this more and more with the different kinds of colors, okay? Do you know what kind of a composer Debussy, like what style of composition he's always associated with?
Impressionistic?
Yes, Impressionism, exactly. And what is Impressionism based off of?
I honestly don't really know. I like know the definition, but I don't know how to explain it.
Okay, that's fine. Impressionism is a style of composition, obviously French style of composition, that's based on a French painting movement. So if you look up paintings by Monet, Renoir, Degas, okay, those are the three main composers of the Impressionistic period. Have you ever seen like a Monet painting?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember what it looked like?
I think there's the water with like the lilies, and that's like one of the main ones that I remember.
Yes, that is one of the main ones. So Monet tended to paint the same thing over and over and over and over. So Water Lilies is one of those series. He also did Haystacks. That's also a very famous one. If you even just go on Google and you look through all of these paintings, you'll see that a lot of them painted over and over and over again. But the thing that changes, do you know what changes between them?
I do not, no.
It's the coloring. Because they would often paint the same thing over and over, but at different times of day, different times of the year, different seasons, right? So even if we just think of Las Vegas here, right? If it's a little cloudy, maybe the sunset looks a little different that day, right? So that's why they would paint with all these same things, again, with these different colors, okay? That's something they were very interested in. So the way that the Impressionistic composers use that is with tonal color. So you said that the first time that the solo is entered is completely by itself, right? Then the second time, who is now joining you?
You have the harp, and then you pass off to oboe at the end.
Yes, so we're adding more instruments as we go through this piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's more
so,
fun.
yeah, and if you notice, the solo is very similar almost every time it comes back, right? So that's his version of painting the same thing, but in different lights, right? Because you have all these other instruments around you that are coloring your sound now that you can mix with, okay? So just like I said, if you experiment with the opening, that's where you have the most flexibility because you're really by yourself. Then as you start adding instruments, think about how intense you want your sound to be or what kind of new character it's changed into. Okay, so let's go on to section 1, number 1, and then see how you can vary it from the very opening. Good. So how did you change that from the very opening?
I think I tried to make my tone a little bit more broader and have like a darker color. I'm not sure if it came across that way, but that's what I was intending.
Yeah, it did. I think maybe you can reserve that maybe even for number 2.
Okay.
Okay, because even you add even more instruments and the solo continues that time, right? So maybe try to think of a character or a transition from the very beginning, and then it's becoming a little less transparent as you're going into 1, as you're growing a little bit more intense, and then maybe think of 2 as really being a blooming, like you said, of this darker kind of, a little bit more intense sound. Okay, can you maybe try number 1 and make it, like I said, a little bit between those 2 options? Yes, I really like that. Okay, because then I hear that transition. I really like that. You don't have to do the E sharp part. Let's go on to number 2. Yeah, very nice. For 2 through 3, right? Sometimes actually, if you do an audition, they will actually give you the whole part to the piece as well, and not just up through 3. So you also sometimes want to be careful of that and be aware when that happens. But so going back to 2, I think actually you can start this solo like you were wanting to start 1. Okay, a little bit more, because now it's changing. Now we don't know where we're going. We're moving somewhere else. Okay, I noticed you fluctuated the tempo a little bit more in this entire section 2 to 3. Like I said, set up in several places. This is where you want to be a little bit more careful. Okay, because since we have more instruments of the orchestra, that means we have to yield to the conductor. Okay, so I appreciate that you're like really like, yeah, I'm gonna speed up here, do this, but you want to be careful, especially with an audition, you know, with speeding up a little too much. Okay, you want to still subdivide and show obviously your artistic stylings, but be careful not to speed up too much. Okay. Really nice on these triplets. You can keep the intensity for the second measure of 2 into that 12/8. I like how you took that breath. You did a good job subdividing and listening to that second flute part that comes in the 9/8 section, imagining that they're playing. Sometimes it's a good practice to also actually play both the first part and the second part because they're so intertwined, especially in this piece. Be careful of the timing in the 12/8, 3 measures before 3. You sped up way too much through those triplets.
Yeah.
So make sure you're still subdividing those eighth notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you try it on that 9/8 with 30-second notes? Yeah, exactly. And you can actually tenuto the beginning of the first triplet just like you did with the second one. So we hear more of that da dee da da dee da da dee da da dee dee. So that'll help anchor your rhythm just a little bit more. Right, but yeah, just subdividing throughout that whole thing. Yeah, this solo is not easy for different reasons, right? Definitely. Okay. Do you want to play this one again, or are you good with this one?
I think I'm good with this one. Unless
Okay. Yeah, no, I like the stylistic timbre changes that you made. I thought those were really nice because it changes the character throughout, so I thought that was very good. Right, want to do the easiest one? I'm just,
Yeah, let's do the easiest one on the left. Why not?
I was like, all of these are not easy.
After I sent you the Mendelssohn script, I was like, okay, I guess we're doing it. Wow.
I'm committed now. I have to do it. Yes, exactly.
Before I play it, I'm just gonna ask you the most obvious question. So, especially for college auditions, you're expected to do it in 3 breaths. And the breath that is the hardest for me to actually get a good enough breath is the third breath. Do you have any tips on making sure you keep getting a good breath every single time?
I also struggle with this. I was just playing it today. So I was like, okay, I gotta be able to do it too. So yeah, it's incredibly hard. You know, playing with the lightest sound that you can to still get the character, but not to use too much air. One thing that I do notice that I sometimes do is after I take a big breath, sometimes I release more than I intend right at the beginning. Okay, so maybe try to be cognizant of that so that you have your air, you know, you're tanked up and kind of ready to go. I was also reading some other things where, you know, Jeannie Baxtresser says you can take out that G if you want to. I also know that some people also recommend taking out the low D right before the C sharp.
Yeah.
Because that one is a little more hidden.
Yeah.
So then you can really crescendo through. So that is another common really quick breath, right? Because one thing that we would obviously struggle with in an audition is potentially losing air, right? Because if we're very nervous, right, our heart rate is very fast, okay? It's like we're running outside, you know, so that is one practice technique that some people do recommend actually is running around the block real quick, running around your house, running up the stairs, and coming back and just playing the audition and, you know, seeing how you feel and taking as many breaths as you need to at that moment to obviously compensate for running around the block. But that is one technique so that you can kind of learn how your body reacts to, you know, being a little nervous with your heart rate a little higher. Also, body mapping wise, right, as you're exhaling, right, your body is getting a little smaller, okay? So I have heard people also say try to stand up as tall as possible as you are running out of air. Get the most out of, yeah. And trying to, some techniques that I've also tried is trying to imagine that I'm not really blowing out too much air, right? So especially when we get down to like around Q, right after that third breath, just imagining, oh, okay, I'm not really blowing any air. There's not very much air coming out. And then at the end, you know, you have enough to get that. But it is very tricky. Have you tried slurring it? Like the whole excerpt?
I have not, surprisingly. I think I did maybe like half of it, and I was like, oh, I'm just messing around. I've got to go home.
Oh, yeah. So some people will practice slurring to see as far as they can go with this big full sound, so that when you reduce and play, like I said, with a very light sound, then you can actually go a little bit farther than you think. It also helps even out the fingers a little bit with that aspect as well. Why don't you try actually slurring it? Don't start from the beginning.
Yeah.
No, I know it's unconventional, but can you actually start with a very big full breath and then start where right after the third breath? How did you feel that time?
Definitely the measure before the D, I could feel like my insides just contracting. But I made it. But
yeah, and you're playing with a very full sound. I think it could be a lot quieter than that. Can you take it down one dynamic and do the same thing?
yeah.
Yeah, that looked physically like it was a lot easier. Was it easier?
Yeah, it felt a lot easier because it wasn't as much of a tight like in your stomach.
Yeah, and now the trick is to get that full of a breath, right?
Yep.
When you're playing in context. So when you're thinking of taking these like fast breaths, what are you thinking about?
I know that I can't take a shallow breath because it's not going to get me very far. So I try and think of it as like, kind of like if a ball drops, it goes whoop. Like you want the air to reach all the way down and then fill up. I know that when I play the excerpt and I hit the other breaths, I try to think of it as I don't want to, for the other two breaths, to have to refill all of my air. I want to have some left so it's not as bad when it comes to the third breath. Yeah.
Yes, good. So have you ever thought, singers think about this a lot, have you ever thought of breathing from your back?
I've not, no.
Yes. Our ribs go all around, right?
Yeah.
And our lungs actually are back here too, okay? So maybe I want you to start in the same place, okay? But this time I want you to think of feeling your back actually expand and your rib cage just opening up. Taking a breath that way. How did that feel?
I think even like imaging my back opening up helped a lot.
Yes, because sometimes we get too focused like on, like you said, not to take like a shallow breath, but sometimes when we don't have that much time, it's really hard to think, oh yeah, open, right?
Yeah.
Another trick is to like put your hands on your rib cage and just think ribs open. No, it sounds bizarre, but if you're like, it's a vacuum, it wants to open up, right? If there's air to be in there, it'll fill up, okay? So thinking ribs open, back expansion, okay? Again, singers are really good at doing this. They think about, that's why they're always holding their sides and thinking of expanding. But flute is very similar to voice. I know a lot of instruments are very similar to voice too, but we don't really have too much resistance except our lips.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to breathe a lot the same way. Okay. Another way to think about taking a big full breath, like you said, like imagining like a ball dropping, expanding your back. Another way to experiment is a different vowel, like an ah or an o. This is where people say, like, imagine that you have an egg in your throat, right? Where it just opens all of this and you're able to fill up all of your lungs, right?
Yeah.
Another thing is that sometimes people say, try not to move your shoulders, right? But actually, your lungs go all the way up here. So it should move a little bit. Not tense, not tense. But if we need to take a full breath like here, we need to use all of it. Okay? Now, what I also want, we'll go back to the beginning. We'll go to the beginning. I know we haven't gotten there yet. We will go to the beginning. But how do you treat these rests?
What do you mean? Like breathing wise or just thinking?
Yeah, breathing wise.
Especially for the breaths leading up to the P in the beginning, I make sure that like maybe in the fourth rest, I exhale, like all my air's out, and then during the fifth rest, I start bringing it in, and then I get really ready to just start on the third beat.
That's a good strategy. I use a similar one. I would say start it earlier.
Okay.
So as soon as you're done, da 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 dee. Yes, so that you can get at least 3 measures.
Yeah.
Right? Full. And then, like you said, the other ones you're just filling up a little bit more, right? Just a little bit more gas. We're not on empty. We're saving that for the end, right?
Yeah.
So think about maybe, like I said, exhaling, doing the same thing, but exhaling just a little earlier than you were doing. Thinking now about your back and your sides, your rib cage, expanding.
Yeah.
Okay. And then as you're getting to that third breath, playing with the even lighter sound, doing the little crescendo diminuendos that he asks for, but not over exaggerating. Okay. Because you want to save it for the end.
Okay.
Okay. All right, nice. So starting from the back, ending, right, pianissimo.
No, I could have been way quieter.
Huh?
Wait, what did you say?
I said pianissimo at the very end.
Oh yeah. I was really loud. I could have been a lot quieter.
Oh yeah, because it's very like surprise ending, right? People expect it to keep going because it's like no writ,
Yeah.
right? But then it's like it's almost a little musical joke. Exactly. You see, you were just doing the motions exactly like that. Okay, very cutesy. Can you just play the last ending? You played even lighter? Well, like I said, I don't know how much of it is like the microphone and it's like compensating for it. It's really hard to tell some dynamic contrast sometimes with this, you know. I also want to say, I think you could have made it. I think you could have made that.
Yeah.
The whole phrase, and then you almost got a little scared.
Yeah. It's kind of, yeah. I think I felt it too. You just have to like, let yourself get past the point where like breathe.
Right. That's also a technique to approach some kind of like difficult breathing passage as well, is how far can you actually go with exhaling until you really need to inhale again. Okay, so seeing that point, obviously not going to be playing that in an audition, but experimenting with how far you can go with that kind of sound. To me, it still sounded like you were playing a little too loud overall. I think if you just approach the entire excerpt as very light, when it's in an orchestral setting, it's quite different. Okay, there's more accompaniment, and you need to be able to project over that because it's in a low register, right? So it's a little different. But with orchestral accompaniment, a lot of flutists actually talk about having the ability to take more breaths when they need it. In an audition setting, quite different.
Yeah.
Right? So, like I said, if you're going to be the only one on the stage, right, for an audition or for a video, I think you can experiment even more, again, with the softer, lighter sound to be able to make it that whole way. So what would you say your dynamic level was when you just...
I think I was quite honestly playing it mezzo forte.
Mezzo forte.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you play it this time mezzo piano?
Still from the top or at key?
Yeah, I'm gonna... yeah, let's do the whole thing so we can really get the tempo. You made it.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but how did it feel? Did you feel the same? Did you feel like you were running out again?
I felt a lot, I think, especially at the beginning, taking that breath throughout like longer than like 2 measures helped a lot. And I wasn't as constricted. But whew, yeah, it felt a lot better.
Yeah, this one's hard to feel comfortable with the breathing, ever. But yeah, it already sounded like it was a lot more comfortable with just those couple techniques. Like I said, even again, to me, through this, it sounds like you could even take it down a little bit more with a dynamic. And that will get you even farther, more comfortable with that. Make sure with this one, I don't know if it was a delay, but make sure that you're very consistent with the tempo throughout the entire thing. Like I said, this is the scherzo, right? Do you know what a scherzo is?
Isn't it a type of dance?
It was originally changed from a type of dance.
Oh, then I do not know what a scherzo is.
It's actually what we were talking about at the end.
Oh, like Trifino and Suzuki. It's a joke.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a musical joke. And do you know who started using the scherzo?
I do not.
The composer you played earlier today.
Oh, maybe it's a big Beethoven.
Who came before Mendelssohn?
That would be...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Beethoven.
Yes, Beethoven. Yeah, he took it from a minuet. So a minuet, a dance in 3/4 time, and he kind of fast forwarded it, made it very fast, right? No longer in 3, but more in 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So we have to feel that steady pulse all the way from the beginning, right, with those 8th notes, because that's where you set the pulse, and then all the way through the 16th notes. We have to feel a consistent pulse the entire time.
Yeah.
Right? So just, staying with metronome work. You can actually also think of maybe decrescendoing a little bit at Q for maybe 2 measures, because right then he says start crescendo a little bit more,
Yeah.
right? And then diminuendo, so that those little things might help you feel even more comfortable with making that breath.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a question. In the orchestral setting, what are the most common breaths to take if the conductor takes it slower? Because I know Anthony and I were talking about this earlier, where the principal flute had to play and it was really slow, so she was like, dying. So what are like the good, like solid points to take for that?
Well, obviously that would
Depends on the tempo.
Yeah, it would depend on the conductor, where they end up tempo-wise,
Yeah.
and where you end up, you know, running out of air at that point. I would try to say, obviously, fitting it in with sometimes when we take other breaths, you know, after maybe a higher note, because sound can project over and like sneak in a breath. Sometimes the idea of taking out a note, just like Jeannie Backstresser talks about taking out the G at Q,
Yeah.
or sorry, at a 2 after Q, 3 after Q, like taking out a note like that, where you can still keep that, but not make it too obvious that you have to take a big breath in the middle of it, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's a hard question to answer because, again, it really depends on tempo of the composer for sure, or conductor.
Conductor.
Yeah. Some of them are the same, but yeah, very good question though.
I also have another one. Did you ever get to play this one at an orchestra?
This one?
Yeah.
I have also not played this one with an orchestra. I know all these great orchestral excerpts, and I've played a lot of like other things, but not, you know, Dvorak and Brahms, and not the Mendelssohn one. Yeah. A lot of people do it as an encore, which is really difficult for flutists because we have to focus for the entire concert and then play, you know, a very difficult solo right at the end. Yeah, you know, play with recordings.
Yeah.
In my imaginary orchestra in my head, that kind of thing. But, you know, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Awesome.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. You sound great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great working with you.
Yeah. Great working with you too. I learned a lot.
So I'm assuming a lot of the kids who are here, some of them play flute. I mean, I know Anthony because he was one of my favorite YAO flute players over the years, just like Sarah. And I recognize Elizabeth. I'm assuming some of the other ones here also play flute, although we have there's other YAO kids here who play violin, viola, cello. So when these kids are doing auditions, obviously it can get very competitive, right? I'll tell you, I think that was last year we might have had 80 violins on like apply, something like that. So in an orchestra, unfortunately, you could have maybe 20 something violins or more, or you know, around that number. But usually we have 3 or 4 flutes. So let's something that Carmella said earlier that was very important when she was talking about her 3 C's. When you audition, one of the things that I actually look out for is personality and the character people bring in their playing. You know, especially like we're listening to these excerpts, so no matter what instrument you play, everybody's playing the same music. And, you know, there's basic things of intonation, rhythm, pulse, things like that. But aside from that, I think personality is something that is sort of hard to show in your playing, but very important. So I'm curious, Sarah, since you're like the guinea pig for this, is that something that, like, when you're practicing, when you were preparing these excerpts, is that something that you think about, or is it something that's not even on your plate? That's nothing that really even occurred to you?
I kind of leave that for when I actually perform it, because I feel like if I practice with what I feel like I should bring to them, I feel like it's kind of fake. So whatever I'm feeling at the moment I'm usually happy. So you're probably gonna get a joyous sound out of me when I play an audition. So I don't really think about it. I know that I keep the tone of the excerpt the same that it's supposed to be in, but I think when I show up, I just play how I feel mainly. Yeah.
All right. That's something I wondered, because, I mean, I've listened to you play for the past year now. So that's something that's always stuck out, where, it's like someone once said to me, they loved listening to someone play just because they didn't sound like anyone else. Like little things like that, right? Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute people here. So if anybody has any questions, what's so funny?
I'm looking at Anthony.
I missed it, whatever that was. So I'm going to unmute. So if you have a question for either Carmella or Sarah, then go right ahead. Did Anthony want to say anything?
I don't know. Actually, wait. I have a question for Carmella, and maybe if Rodrigo is still here. I don't know.
I see Rodrigo there.
I'm at that stage in my undergrad that I have to think about grad school auditions now. And I'm like, where do I even start? Because I kind of like had a plan laid out for me in going into undergrad, but now I'm like, okay, so this is really it. So I have to think more and think harder. And basically, what was your process of like deciding schools and auditioning, pre-screening, and taking lessons with those professors? And how did you find the school that was for you?
Rodrigo, you want to go first?
Well, thanks for asking me the question. First of all, Sarah, that was phenomenal. Great job. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, choosing a school is like, it's one of the most difficult decisions, especially for us. Yes, there are the formative years of your music education. And, fortunately, there are so many schools out there that provide an excellent quality education for music, for the arts. Where you want to go, who's going to be your mentor for 3-4 years, maybe more than that, and you want to make sure that you find a mentor who understands you, who is encouraging, who motivates you, someone who pushes your limits in a positive way, and that might take a little bit of time, but it's definitely worthwhile visiting those schools, introducing yourself to those teachers, and letting them know that you're interested in their program, and and just get to know them in one way or another, and you'll be surprised of how many times those teachers, even though they're busy, in their schedules, they have the time to talk to you a little bit and show you around and tell you what their program is all about. And of course, you can write them down and see if there's some kind of connection between you and your mentors. But of course, the teacher in your studio is just one of the main factors. This is just one. You want to see the ensembles that the university has, the other kinds of offerings that the school has for you. So yeah, take the time to go through all of those options. Write down everything you can, because believe me, it's going to be a lot of information, and one way or another, you need to find out a way where you can compare and contrast all of those options. And don't be afraid. Just contact those teachers. Go to those schools. It is an investment, but it's definitely a worthwhile investment.
Definitely. I would totally agree with some of what Rodrigo just said. It's really important when looking for, a school and a teacher that you find a fit that is really good for you and your learning style as well. In addition to checking out the ensembles, I would also recommend checking out facilities, right? If you're going to be practicing a lot, you want to make sure that there's a practice space for you, that's readily available, because that can affect your overall progress too. If you live in a place where maybe you live in an apartment and you're not able to practice all hours of the day, it's important to have a facility at school where you can do that. I was told to make lists of schools, teachers that were maybe like reach schools, reach teachers, and still make the connections and everything like you do already at like NFA, your conventions, conferences that you attend, things like that, master classes that you play in. And so I was told to make this list of the reach schools, reach teachers, and then ones that, are kind of in the middle that I think I could get into, have a really good shot, that have also, if assistantships are important to you, check out the financial aid assistantships. Yeah, definitely. And then a set of maybe what you call safe schools where, you'll get a great education, but that you don't have to worry about maybe, am I going to get in because there's only one spot, but 200 people auditioning, that kind of thing. Rick, do you have some insight into this as well? Dr.
Yeah, no, I was just observing. You and Rodrigo hit everything on the spot. It's exactly what I would say to students looking at my university. So yeah, check facilities, check. We always want to see people, are super welcoming to anyone who's got interest. We'll always find time to give you lessons and show you around and show you whatever that university might have to offer. So I think those two things are really great. And I love that Carmella brought up the idea of looking at facilities. It's a huge thing to really consider. If there's when I was at USC, we had to leave our campus and walk across many blocks to a very scary part of town, to a very dilapidated building, to rehearse. And that was a big impact, because there were times when at nighttime I didn't want to go do that, so yeah, you look at the facilities that you want to look at and enjoy those and take a look at it. So thank you for including me. I was just watching.
Is there any other questions? Anything else anybody wants addressed?
I kind of wanted to comment on that, because
You again? Again?
Yeah. No, but I kind of got lucky when I was auditioning, and I did contact the professors. I did get to know everyone, but I didn't have as much information as I should have had. And I wanted to study with Jean because Carmella studied with Jean, and so did Donnie, and they did well with him and they love him. But I didn't know if we would mesh, and I kind of got lucky, and we ended up working well together. But I know a lot of people that start off in their undergrad and realize, I don't think this is for me. I don't think this school is for me. And they end up moving, and that's okay. And I think it's a good thing to prepare for that. Like sometimes you will get into school and start off in school and it won't be for you, and that's okay.
Well, I definitely agree with you. The fact that you said that's okay, I think a lot of people, that's very hard, because you put so much time, effort, commitment into it, and you're trying to make it work, even if it's, not the best situation. And sometimes that can be hard on you, especially when you're, if something so intimate as music, right? There's a reason why we all get into music. It's our personal expression. So that is one thing, about that we've all been talking about with auditions and things that can be a bit hurtful, is if we don't win an audition, or you end up at a school and it wasn't exactly what you expected. Like, how do you deal with things like that? And you have to remember that these are only just like little snapshots that are happening in a certain moment. And it's very hard, but we have to try to sometimes put things into perspective and remember the things that we can control and the things that we don't have any control over, such as judges' opinions, things like that, or trying to make personalities work when, maybe you wouldn't have been friends with a certain person because your personalities don't get along. So to study with them, yes, you can appreciate many things about what they're doing, but if you don't feel comfortable 100% of the time, it can be hard to be yourself and grow in that situation. So the fact that you said, it's okay to change and it's okay to want different things. We all evolve as we go through our studies, through life, different experiences. So it's very important to learn from all of them, So I'm really glad you said that.
Very well said.
I'm curious about something. Sarah, why are you working on those extras for a certain reason, or are they for something, or?
Half of it is for college. I'm starting to get all the rep under my fingers as I get ready for college auditions. But the other half is boredom of quarantine. You're just like, can I do this? And you figure out if you can. But with the Mendelssohn, I started learning that because of Cody Anthony. Because, of course, with LVA flutes, we're very competitive, and we're like, we gotta learn the Mendelssohn scherzo. And so that's the reason I learned that one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll give one last round. Any other questions? Anybody want to address anything? Have any comments? Such a quiet crowd.
Nobody's saying anything.
Yeah, I'd love to figure out how to do that. Is that like a Harry Potter backdrop?
Oh.
No, I noticed that.
Oh, yeah. She's got the virtual backdrop.
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking to you.
I need to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right, so I guess. Oh, look, she's changing it now. She's showing us diversity.
Showing us her skill.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Sarah and Carmella for doing the class. It was very informative. It was very fun. It was great hearing you again, Sarah. It's been a while, right?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Actually, back in March we were doing Harry Potter, and then we had to suddenly stop. So yeah.
Junior, I promise on Nimbus 2000, I have now learned my part. If I show up and I can't play that, kick me out.
I don't know if you know that one, Carmella. It's the Harry Potter, the symphonic suite. The John Williams. They should make that one of your excerpts too. It's like
Anything John Williams.
Yeah, you're reading like a little marathon.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd like to thank you both for doing it. I'd like to thank everybody for coming in and listening and watching. We're going to be running classes pretty much every week until the end of May. I believe most classes are taking, if I remember the top of my head, Tuesdays and Fridays are when we're running the majority of the master classes. And then there are a couple pre-recorded classes that are also going to be going up on the website at lvyao.org/VI2020. And this recording, this entire class will be available for you to watch again. I think by tonight it'll probably be uploaded, so you will be able to play back the entire video. I see there's someone coming in now. So who wants to tell Carolyn that the class is about to
You can watch it, yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much
anyway.
for having me. I really want to thank the LVYAO for putting this together. This is a really great idea, and it's really awesome to see everybody and, you know, working with you again, Sarah. It was really great.
Thank you so much. I've always wanted to work with you. Like, for some reason, for as long as I've known of your existence, I have not worked with you before. And it's unique to me because I've known you for so long. Like, other than like HSO, but I haven't had like an actual lesson.
Well, no chance.
Yeah.
No, unusual circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have met.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You've
But
seen
you know
me as a
what?
kid.
We'll see. YAO had a lot of summer programs lined up. We do summer camps and things like that. It doesn't look like that's going to happen this year, so I'm going to try to see if we can do more of these programs, these virtual seminars and workshops and stuff like that online. So maybe we'll see each other again.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Well, take care. I hope you have a good rest of your Friday. It is Friday, yes?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm to the point that I don't know what day it is. I just know that I'm locked up in my house.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So it is what it is. So I hope you all take care. I hope to see you soon. And do check out the schedule. And again, Carmella and Sarah, thank you for
Thank
playing.
you.
Thank you so
Anthony,
much
good
for
to see you.
together. Yeah.
Everybody.
Right. And actually, and thank you for, it says Derek. I heard you call him something else. And Rodrigo for pitching in. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. All right, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.